What's up, good people? We are here. It's me, Jamie, and our friend here, Craig. You probably know him for his I Got 5 on It on our YouTube channel. You know him at Twitter at top_flight3. Daniel Simmons is going to join us, but I think it's his birthday today. He had some friends surprise him, so he's off doing funner things than having to review this mess of a game. Jamie, how are you doing? How you feeling?
Well, like I told you guys before we went on the air, I spent the majority of the last 3 days in bed with my first case of COVID. And after watching the Padres lose and the Chargers lose all within a span of a few hours, I wish I was back in bed with COVID. That's how I'm doing.
This was a very tough sports day. Having two screens of Padres Chargers and have them both shit the bed simultaneously was not a fun day. Craig, how are you doing? A little bit better than us, maybe? Didn't have to watch the Padres.
No, I'm a Braves fan, so my misery was suffered.
The last round, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to take my kids to see Black Adam last night, and that was pretty fun. So
ooh, how was it?
It was a pretty good movie. It's better than what I expected. And then the Chargers came and crapped on my parade today. So
Did The Rock save the DC universe?
Possibly.
Yeah? It's that good, huh?
Possibly. I believe there's a chance there. He did his thing, man. I'm really proud of the way the movie ended up. I wasn't expecting a whole lot, but he did a phenomenal job, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. So I don't even know where to begin here. But thanks, Craig, for joining us today. Jamie was not going to make it, as you heard, but now he's here. He toughed it out, and Craig's here to join us too. So we got a party of party of three today. Nick wants just Black Adam takes if you got him, Craig. But I think saving the DC universe is pretty close to a pretty hot take here.
Yeah. Well, if this was a DC pod, then I could talk to you about it for like the next hour and a half.
Yeah.
We could avoid all this crap.
Yeah. So let's talk about this Green Lantern of a game and just how bad it ended up being. They get blown out. This is the second time at home, by the way. Blown out twice now. Got blown out by Jacksonville. Got blown out by Seattle. Keenan Allen starts the game, goes out. Mike Williams starts the game. Foot injury, can't even put weight on it. And then J.C. Jackson looks like a real bad injury off the knee where he tried to go up and deflect a pass on Goodwin, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody else mentioned it. He was stride for stride with Goodwin. I thought he was going to actually make that play until all of a sudden he was kind of went limp halfway up in the air. So I thought he had a pretty good rep there up until he had the injury. But a lot of injuries occurred today. The offense couldn't get going, and it was just a bad showing from the Chargers all the way around. You got any big takeaways, Jamie?
I think my biggest takeaway right now is, I said last week that I was 1 foot out on Staley. I think I might be all the way out on Staley.
After today?
After today. Yeah, they were not prepared at all. They didn't play very hard at all in the first quarter. They got a little bit of a peak in the second quarter where they got themselves back in the game. There was just no urgency. Didn't seem like there was any kind of a game plan to speak of. They couldn't stop the run. We're, spent all this money on the interior defensive line, and they can't stop the run now. Getting shredded at the end. Not that that particular run made a difference in the game, but got maybe a slight chance to get back in the game, and you give up a 74-yard touchdown run to Walker at the end of the game. They've turned Justin Herbert into, somebody said it in our Discord, they've turned Justin Herbert back into, the Oregon Justin Herbert. They've turned him into Tua Tagovailoa. He's dinking and dunking, throwing balls, no more than 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Everything about this game was bad. The team seems to be regressing. Now they have no wide receivers to speak of. We've been talking for 3 years about the need at wide receiver. They continue to do nothing about it. Now they're fucked.
It's going to be that day, by the way.
Yes.
There'll be some F words for sure. So if you got kids, hide them.
So, yeah, it was a bad day all the way around. And I know there's been a lot of talk about, they were 4-2 going into this week. Don't be negative. They're still, they're in the hunt for the wild card. They're tied for the division. Mm-hmm. They still got a winning record. There's so many positives. You know what? To hell with all that. This is not a good football team right now. They beat up on some bad teams. They've gotten their asses kicked by good teams. They've gotten their asses kicked by average teams, blown out twice at home. This is a bad football team, and I think what we're seeing is Staley is being exposed as more of a motivational speaker and a thinker than a football coach at this point. His teams just aren't prepared.
How do you feel about that, Craig?
Now, piggybacking off of what Jamie just said, doesn't that sound eerily similar to a previous coach? Like someone who is really rah-rah, gets the team motivated, talks the tough guy talk in a different way, of course. And just seems like you can get the team amped up and ready to go. But when it comes down to situational football and making decisions in game, just not getting it done. And I think that's what the biggest problem is right now. I've done my best to hold on to this whole Staley thing as well. I was a big Brian Daboll fan, and I'm, as we speak, my phone's buzzing, getting texts from all my buddies who are making fun of me for the Brian Daboll thing and not getting him when we had the opportunity. So whatever with that, just got to move past it. But at the end of the day, I've said it now. I'm going to say it here. I think Staley's ahead of his skis now. I think he's at a point now where he's in over his head. He doesn't seem to be able to make the proper adjustments where necessary from a head coaching standpoint. I understand that Joe Lombardi, he's calling the offensive plays, but there has to be some input from Staley there. And a lot of this stuff that's going on with all the injuries, say from a wide receiver perspective, like Mike Williams having to be your number one wide receiver with Keenan going out, and the fact that they can't scheme Williams open. He's super static in the offense. They don't move him around a ton. And when they do, they find ways to get him open. It's just not done enough. I don't feel like Staley's imprint is on this team. Well, whatever the imprint is supposed to be. I know what it was framed to us as, but right now, the team doesn't have an identity whatsoever. When things are working, they only work temporarily. When teams figure those things out, there's no plan B. So it's all screwed right now. I don't curse a bunch of guys, so if I don't drop the F-bombs, don't be surprised. It's not really my thing. But you guys have fun. Let them loose for me.
Yeah. That was kind of the issue last week is even though they got the win, like we just don't know what the identity was and is at this point. And I know, a lot of people are blaming Lombardi and everything else in between. And obviously Staley deserves the brunt of this too, but there's just it just seems like there's issues all the way around other than special teams, which looked pretty good today. Outside of maybe, DeAndre, maybe Carter bobbling almost fumbling again today. But it just seems like defensively, we don't know what their identity was. They got all these guys to stop the run, like Jamie mentioned. Even though Sebastian Joseph Day had a really nice play on that safety, Austin Johnson flashed a lot today. You get stupid penalties from like Tillery. And then a lot of PI calls that didn't go their way today. And then offensively, it's just like, I just don't know what they're doing with Herbert. You've got a generational talent, and I know there's a rib injury and whatnot, and you could tell he's definitely tentative. He's trying to run out of bounds. He's not trying to extend any play. When he could get a first down, he's sliding short of it at times. When he can get in the end zone on one play, he slid short there too. But I don't know what's going on with this team. I don't know what their identity is. It just seems like Herbert's so willing to take the check down. There's a lot of screens behind the line of scrimmage, and there was, I think, less than 10 passes past 10 yards today. I mean, that can't really happen with a guy like Herbert. And just speaking on Herbert, I don't know what happened today. I don't know when he became that sidearm quarterback, but today everything was a low release. He had 3 balls tipped to the line of scrimmage today, which is very rare for him. One in which he caught, which didn't make any sense. He should knock down, but I don't know. The arm angle changed today. I don't know if he's playing more tentative because there's a little bit more pressure, but nothing was working really, guys. I don't know what they did good today, to be honest with you. Eckler was great, but he was just a safety valve.
He was about the only offensive player that showed up.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. I'm starting to get worried about Herbert. We've been saying for a while that he doesn't look right, that something's off. And yeah, I'm sure some of it has to do with the ribs, but I don't think all of it is the ribs. He's falling away from a lot of his throws. I noticed today, I don't know if you guys noticed it, I feel like his release is a lot lower than it was the first 2 years.
That's what I'm saying. He's doing a sidearm throw here.
Everything's coming out sidearm. Balls are getting bad at the line of scrimmage. The ball's late. He's indecisive. He doesn't trust what he's seeing. He doesn't have the zip to get the ball where it needs to be on a lot of those out routes because he's throwing off of his back foot. he just looks really uncomfortable and really unsure of himself, both in terms of the physical and the mental side of the game right now. And it just seems like he's taken some really big steps back. And those things were there before he got hurt, by the way. You could see them, particularly in the first half of the Chiefs game before he took that hit and hurt his ribs. You could see those things. He was skittish in the pocket. He was not comfortable. And those things have carried over the later we've gotten into the season. So I'm concerned. I think we've seen a big regression in terms of Herbert's mechanics, in terms of his pre and post snap progressions. I think he's taken big steps back. I don't think they've done anything to help him. They put themselves in a position where they have no wide receivers who can separate, nobody who can create after the catch. So they're running these, all these routes within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and then there's nowhere to go after that because everybody knows they're running stick, and there's 5 guys surrounding 3 receivers on every play. I mean, how many plays did we see today where they're running, 3 or 4 curls in the middle of the field? There are 3 receivers right in the middle of the field within 5 yards of each other, and they're surrounded by 4 defenders. There's nowhere to go with the ball. On the play that Herbert threw his first interception on, I think it was on the first possession of the game, he's trying to force a ball up the seam to Carter on a curl route. Mike is 5 yards to Carter's right, and Mike's man comes off the ball and jumps the route and picks it off. There was nowhere to go with that ball, and we're seeing that more and more. Defenses are clogging those lanes. They're squeezing down on routes, and even if they do make the catch, there's nowhere to go. So it's a problem with the offensive, the scheme, the spacing, the route distributions. It's a problem with the offensive personnel. They don't have enough skill right now, especially now that Mike's hurt, and he was already part of the problem. There's a lot of issues on this offense right now, and if Keenan got hurt again and Mike is out for an extended period of time, guys, they have no offense.
Yeah.
They can't throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage to Eckler 15 times a game and expect to put points on the board. There is no offense if both Mike and Allen are hurt. And they have put themselves in this position by ignoring the need for speed and twitch and explosiveness on the outside and in the slot for the better part of the last 3 years. This has been something we've been talking about for a long time. They had to know it was an issue, and they've been ignoring it, and now they're really going to pay for it.
Well, this is the position you put yourself in when you ignore things like that, because, for instance, they want to be an offense that's pass first, but they lack the personnel to do that. And if you have a situation where you lose one of your 2 top guys, as we're seeing right now, you can't adjust because there's not the personnel to fit a quick game. You can't get the ball to anyone on a smoke screen, something short and underneath, and expect them to make anything happen because we just don't have those guys that exist that can perform in that fashion. So unfortunately, they have backed themselves into a corner. That injury to Mike Williams looked bad. He couldn't put any weight on it whatsoever. I mean, I'm not going to speculate on it. It definitely looked like his ankle twisted in a fashion that ankles should not twist in, which typically for a person his size is a rough recovery. And with that being said, I mean, again, I don't quite understand the game planning here. How do you go into a week like this, knowing what you're having, limited, like what you're limited at in this, when we're talking about, what am I saying here? Not special teams, but wide receivers. Chargers got my brain all foggy right now.
Yeah.
But when you don't have what's necessary to go out there and play the type of offense that you need, you can't just roll into the week assuming it's going to work somehow. There has to be some other plan. Keenan comes out there for a few plays in the first quarter, and then that is the lowest pitch count I've ever seen. I don't know whether or not they were saying he re-injured the hamstring or what, or if they just didn't want to push it that far. They felt like maybe the game was close enough at that point to where they could pull him and maybe give him the rest he needs going through the bye and coming back. I don't know. But I just don't see the type of game planning necessary to take a quarterback like Herbert and make him to improve him. Honestly, they are regressing. It sucks to see it because a talent like that, you should be able to find ways around issues that you're having on the offense to continue to grow him and grow the offense. Right now, Herbert looks like Alex Smith, but a less accurate version of him. And yes, the arm angle has changed a bit. And it's weird because going into the draft, that was part of his problem with accuracy. He had to go and improve the way that he threw the ball, the angle at which he threw it. It improved after he was drafted or going through the draft process. And now it's like back at Oregon all over again. And I truly don't understand what the path is moving forward. I mean, the Chargers aren't normally people who go into trade season looking to make moves. Trade deadline comes and goes. They aren't very active. So, I mean, if they sit on their hands this time, it's pretty much, I guess, conceding or assuming that guys are going to come back healthy and suddenly the offense is going to be back to normal again. But that's not the case. The same issues are going to exist, and they either need to make a move or two, or you might as well just look at the season the way that we have multiple seasons in the past recently. It's just going to be mediocrity again, and with the amount of talent that on this team, shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, and I think they put themselves in this situation because they basically banked on Joshua Palmer becoming a high-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, in which they drafted him to be, and he just hasn't been that, and he's been injured. There's been issues with the hands. That just hasn't worked out, and good teams will draft and go to free agency and kind of make sure that you hedge your bet there, and just in case a guy like Joshua Palmer doesn't work out, you get somebody in the wings to help come in and be that next wide receiver up. But when you got Keenan Allen going down, we don't know the extent of his injury now because he was out really soon. So whether he re-injured that or they wanted to use it as a precaution, who knows? But Mike Williams, like Craig said, man, he couldn't even put weight on that foot. He had to be dragged off the field with 2 coaches on each arm. So who knows how long that's going to be, but looks like if it is for an extended period of time, I just don't know how you don't, at this point, go and try to find somebody and get a wide receiver down the free agent market. You went all in this offseason. You made all these big acquisitions, and then to have it all fall apart with injuries to J.C. Jackson, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and the like, Rashawn Slater, and having all these big injuries, if you're going to make that push, you might as well get the talent and surround Herbert with it or make some kind of splash, whether it's with the coaching staff, which I just don't see happening this early. That it's going to have to be way into the season for them to fire Lombardi, and I don't see them firing Staley at all this season. If it is, I think it's the offseason. Unless somehow they lose the next 8 or 9 straight or whatever. But after that, I think they got to make some kind of move here. They've got to rally the troops. This is a really, really bad team right now, in which the way they're playing, they're just not good. And if they don't make a move in free agency, you're looking at Michael Bandy and Carter and Jason Moore as your wide receiver group going in past the bye. And that, I don't care what quarterback you have back there. You can't make that offense work, period. And then if that happens, that's going to be an excuse for keeping Lombardi another year because they didn't have the quote-unquote talent to help win them games because Keenan and Mike Williams were down. So, at this point, there's got to be some kind of move. I'm not saying panic, but I'm saying there's got to be some kind of shakeup. They cannot go past the bye and past the trade deadline with the roster that they currently have if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are out for quite a while.
Let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
If Keenan Allen and Mike are both lost for the season, does adding one wide receiver change anything for them?
Well, I wouldn't say. Okay. If we're talking lost for the season, which I wouldn't say that. Speculation. I don't think Keenan Allen's lost for the season, but if both those wide receivers are lost for the season, then there's no point in bringing a free agent wide receiver in.
Let's say both are lost for extended periods. Does it make sense to bring in a trade for a wide receiver?
They got to find somebody. Yeah, I think it does. So then when they're ready, that maybe a good enough wide receiver will keep them afloat. So when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams come back, they can then take that and push it into the playoffs, hopefully, if they play well enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense to give up draft capital for a rental.
Oh, man. Hold on real quick. J.C. Jackson dislocated his kneecap per Ian Rappaport. God.
It looked bad. It looked really bad when he went down.
Oh, God. That's awful. I feel terrible for him.
Playing pretty well today, too.
I did, too.
One rep. People got on him for his pass interference call, which I thought was kind of ticky-tack.
Ticky-tack. Exactly. Same here.
In good position and was making a good play on the ball.
And vice versa. That call on DK Metcalf on the offensive I thought was ticky-tack, too. I thought both of them were just kind of borderline. But anyway, go ahead.
I thought he was playing pretty well. It's a bummer. It seemed like they were doing a better job of putting him in a position to do the things that he does well instead of asking him to play so much zone. And he seemed like he was bouncing back. So to lose him is a bummer.
Yeah.
Feels like he was playing with a lot more confidence just on those few reps.
Yep, it did.
More
It
at home.
was more physical, more aggressive. He looked much better.
Especially on that sideline play to DK Metcalf. It looked like he kind of got some swag back when he dropped that ball. When DK dropped that ball on the sideline, he looked pretty pumped up in that incompletion. But go ahead.
Yep. Now I lost track of what I was saying.
I was talking about going and doing some kind of shakeup soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess time will tell. I wonder if both Keenan and Mike are lost for extended periods, and Keenan's been out for a while already, and he was in for a short while on a very brief pitch count today, and came right back out. So I mean, they haven't said anything. I'm assuming he got hurt again. It's speculation, but they needed him. So I can't imagine they thought that the game was in control and they didn't need him at that point.
Yeah.
He was the only one making third down plays. And I don't think they completed a third down after he came off the field.
Here's some
one.
news. Math says that Fernando Ramirez says Keenan was on a pitch count.
Yeah, we knew he was going to be on a pitch count, but that was a real brief pitch count, like really short. He was hardly on the field at all.
Extreme.
Yeah, that was quicker than Clevenger. Go ahead. They sorry. Go ahead.
He just sucked.
Sorry. Had to get one.
I do think a change or changes in the coaching staff is warranted at this point. I can't imagine that they're looking at the offense right now and thinking that things are going well at all, or that they're particularly happy with what Lombardi is doing, considering he's apologizing on a weekly basis for being too conservative and then not changing a goddamn thing. So I would think his head would be the first to be on the chopping block. I doubt they fire anybody during the bye week, but they should. Why not give somebody like Shane Day a chance to call the plays? Just a different call plays from a different perspective, attack things from a different angle. I'm going to say this. I don't think all of this is on Lombardi. I've been saying it all season. They have a very limited personnel, particularly with Keenan off the field. They have way too many, as Craig has said, and we've said this before, they have way too many redundant pieces in the wide receiver room. All these guys have basically identical skill sets. Nobody can separate. Nobody can take the top off the defense. Nobody can make people miss. They're statues running 5-yard routes. They just
boys, we've been on Twitter. I mean, I feel like the three of us have had this conversation 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. Here we are again.
I mean, we've been talking about it forever, but we really started talking about it when they drafted Herbert. It was, hey, they need to re-envision the way they're looking at the wide receiver room because this is a very slow group, and the slow group made sense for Rivers. They had big guys who could go up and catch the ball. They didn't need somebody who could necessarily take the top off the defense by himself because Rivers couldn't push the ball down the field. But having a jump ball guy like Mike made sense. Now with Herbert, who can get the ball down the field and should be getting the ball down the field more often, they need more speed. They need more twitch. They need guys who can take the top off. They need guys who can make people miss in the middle of the field, especially if you're committed to this short passing game. You can't have to rely on 15-yard plays to score field goals. You just can't. It doesn't work. You can't win games that way. If you need 8, 9, 10-minute drives to kick a field goal, I got news for you. You're going to lose more often than not. You're not going to put enough touchdowns on the board to win games. You have to be able to turn those 5-yard completions into 10, 15, 20-yard gains because you can make people miss in the middle of the field, and they can't do that. So this has been a problem for several years. It's starting to become more of a problem. A lot of, there were plenty of people on Twitter who were telling us all offseason, oh, they were a top 5 offense. They were one of the most efficient offenses in the league last year. You don't know what you're talking about. They're fine. Well, hello. Defenses figured them out. And now everybody's talking about how slow they are. So once again, we're 2 years ahead of the curve. The Chargers are 3 years behind the curve. And now we're dealing with, we're dealing with the consequences of them being too slow to adjust.
What we're dealing with is a chat talking about bringing Tyrell Williams back and T-Billy at this point. That's how bad we're at.
That's how
That's what
bad
kind of that's how bad of a spot we're in. Craig, go ahead. You were about to say something.
I was just saying, I think the whole speed thing has been misconstrued. Everyone assumes that by speed, we mean someone who can run really fast in a straight line and create separation down the field. And that's not what speed constitutes, at least not in my mind. Talking about people who can move in short areas, agility, speed, explosiveness, because it gives you options. That person can be used in a multitude of ways. Whereas right now, the guys that you have, you can only do one or two things with. And the unfortunate part about it is if you're playing in a game where you need to score points and score points quickly, they don't offer you very much. So you're looking at, guys on certain teams, and I'm not, saying that we need a Tariq Hill. There's only one of those. But there's a difference in having guys like a Keenan and a Mike and a Josh Palmer you've got to matriculate the ball down the field with, and then hope that you can maybe catch Mike on the bomb. You can lull teams to sleep and then beat them over the top. Or you can give a guy a quick bubble smoke screen and watch him make one or two guys miss and break it for 60 or 70 yards. You should have someone who has the potential to do that, at least one guy, because now, remember, everyone was on the Jalen Guyton train, and it was like, we got our fast guy. Well, great. Jalen could run really fast in a straight line, but you see him try to make something happen short, wasn't a whole lot going on there. And now that you don't have him, you are now essentially, well, even not right now because we don't know how long Mike's going to be out, but you've been now limited to just Mike Williams and tossing 50-50 balls down the field. So now, again, the Chargers are doing that thing where they wait so long to fix a problem until it becomes a glaring issue and they're already in the mud about it. So now they have to play catch up. So they did this with the offensive line. They let that get out of hand. Now we're on to the receiver part of it, and you can't ignore it anymore. You can't make excuses any longer. So what do you do now? And you got your bright shining quarterback there, your superstar quarterback that you've now allowed to regress, and his confidence is shaken. You can see it. He's locking on to one or two receivers that he trusts, and he's throwing it to them no matter what. And he's expecting them to catch the ball. He's trusting his arm to an extent too much. And now you're having to win the game on his arm because I don't know. I've got to go back and watch it, but I felt like they were running more zone concepts in the run game again today, and they've gotten away from power again, which I don't get it. It works, and then you stop using it, or at least blend it and have a more balanced running game. Again, I don't put all of this on Lombardi because I agree with Jamie. There are issues with personnel right now. The larger problem is that they can't sustain drives to keep the defense out of situations to where they have to defend short fields. You can't expect your defense to line up and defend 30, 40 yards of grass on 50, 60% of their snaps. That's ridiculous. No team, short of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens is going to do anything about that. So, it's finding yourself in situations where you're being reactive instead of proactive, and this is just a Chargers theme, and I don't get it.
Okay, so I don't want to poke the bear here, Craig, but don't they have a speak? He won't even look at it. All right, I won't even look. Don't just ignore what just happened.
I was expecting one of you to poke at me about it. When you were talking about what they didn't have at wide receiver, I was waiting to see if you were going to do it, and I felt like you spared me.
This is my burner account, Craig. This is my burner. I got it in the chat. No, so I think there's got to be some kind of move. Jamie thinks coaching staff. What do you say, Craig? Going into this, I want to hear your take on this. Going into the bye here, the Chargers are in trouble. Season isn't all but lost. We don't know all about the injuries, but if Keenan and Mike are out for an extended period of time, like we talked about in our scenario here, do you make a change to coaching staff, or do you kind of ride what they have right now and hope that it works out? Which way would you go?
So what I would do, or what I think the Chargers will do?
What Craig would do if Craig was GM.
Okay, so if I were GM, then I would have to make some adjustments in the coaching staff. I know we can't blame Joe Lombardi for everything, but I would start thinking about having to make a move off of him, maybe a Shane Day, because Joe's not shown the consistency to be able to make adjustments in game. It feels like he rolls in there with his play sheet. He's got whatever that first side of his play sheet is, and he's going to run through those. And once he runs out, if they don't work, or if they do work, he'll rinse, wash, repeat, If they don't work, there's no adjustments to be made. And I understand the injuries. On the offensive line, it's a huge deal. You're not dropping Herbert back 5 to 7 steps very often. We saw what that looks like. There's almost no time to get the ball down the field. Well, side note, when you got slower receivers, it takes longer to get those passes off anyway. So that's one side of the coin. But as far as getting adjustments made, to me, it might have to start with Lombardi, because as much as people are bagging on the defense, again, you have to look at what the defense is working with. They're on the field way too much. So at some point, some of the blame has to be on the play caller offensively. If that's going to be Lombardi that has a shoulder the weight of that, then that's where I start. From there, you have to improve the personnel to the best of your ability. And if this offseason was any indication, maybe it's a different year in that regard. Maybe they're more willing to go out and make some moves. I don't know. I'm hoping so, because what we don't want to see is what the Chargers normally do: roll into a bye with an excuse. Oh, we've got a ton of injuries. We're just hoping guys get better, and then once they come back, we'll be fine. We're over 500, so there's no need to panic and make wholesale changes yet. That, to me, is a loser mentality. You're fine with settling for what is and what exists now, as opposed to looking at, okay, we have a problem. It's already an issue. Let's do our best to address it now so that potentially we can salvage this season, as opposed to letting it linger, things not getting much better, or things staying status quo, and then you end up, a game or so over 500 at the end of the season, or again, missing out on the playoffs altogether. So you can't, in my opinion, I would not go into the bye and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Craig, and we've mentioned Shane Day before. I just think it's about that time to do it. You've got an extra week to prepare. Shane Day and Herbert have an amazing relationship. You can see in every behind-the-scenes video they've done this season and the all-in videos. Shane Day and Herbert are really, really close. And Lombardi at this point, whether they get Elijah Moore in free agency or not, there's still an issue there. The play calling is bad, it's stale, it's boring, and quite honestly, we're wasting Herbert's talent. Not all the blame is on Lombardi at this point, but I think enough of it is to make a change and move on to a different offensive coordinator. Lombardi does not seem to be the answer going forward. They're all offseason, we're talking about they're going to air it out. They're going to air it out. Oh, they're going to go deep. There's going to be lots of deep shots. We're seeing none of that. We didn't see a lot today, and this is one of the worst-ranked defenses in the NFL. I know Tariq Woolen's playing great as a rookie, but outside of that, and Kobe Bryant's playing pretty good too, but they've got a lot of holes in that defense, and they didn't try to expose them at all today. There's one deep shot, which was kind of an underthrow to Mike Williams today with Woolen in coverage, but there just isn't that big dynamic plays with a quarterback who's got an arm. Whether he's hurt or not, he can still air it out. So in my mind, I think Shane Day, this is the perfect week to do it. And it's pretty clear that at this point, Lombardi just isn't good enough. And you can tell every week it's the same thing. I wasn't aggressive enough. Things have got to change. There's an excuse every single week on why things didn't work out, and he's taking blame, and I get it. He's being a man about it, and he's taking responsibility, but that's at this point now, with where they're at and this loss at home, he's got to take responsibility about how bad this offense is up to this point going into the bye, and you got to lay that at his feet, and you got to let him go. I would absolutely bring Day in. I would love to get some wide receiver help if I were GM, but that also depends on where Mike Williams is at and where Keenan Allen's at. I think if Mike is out for an extended period of time and Keenan's they were on a pitch count and he was feeling a little sore, so they're being proactive and took him out, I'm good with that. And you've got another wide receiver to kind of fill in Mike's spot, and then when Mike comes back, you've got 3 strong receivers. I would definitely look at kind of acquiring a wide receiver in the trade deadline if they can, depending on the price and everything else, obviously.
If Keenan's back and able to play, I would say, yeah, you go out and you try to make a move to give him a running mate, so to speak. If he's still out for an extended period, I think it becomes harder to justify making a move like that.
I agree with that.
And we're talking about Lombardi an awful lot, and there are problems with Lombardi. I think the system is broken. I know they had a lot of success with this, with the short passing game, the quick passing game, and being efficient last year. It certainly seems like defenses are figuring it out. They're having a much harder time moving the ball this year. We saw some defenses figure it out last year. Some of the better defenses coached by seasoned DCs figured it out and really suffocated them at points last year. Now it seems like it's happening much more consistently on a weekly basis. Almost teams are shutting them down. So something needs to change with the system. And I think one of the things that I like about Shane Day is I believe he came from the Rams, right? So he's not a Sean Payton disciple. He's not coming from that New Orleans offense. He's coming from more of the
I think it was the Niners.
Yeah, it was the Niners.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, he's coming from a different system with different passing philosophies, and maybe that'll mix some things up a little bit. They'll run the ball a little bit more, get some more play action, maybe get some more bootlegs with Justin, move him around a little bit, use his legs a little bit more, try to push the ball down the field a little bit. It just feels like this particular system is just stale and stagnant, and they're not able to, like Craig said, they're not able to make the adjustments they need to make in game or between games to fix the problems they have. And some of that is personnel related, but some of it is scheme related. And we're not seeing that Justin Herbert 2.0 that we were promised. We're seeing more like Justin Herbert 1.5 or 1.0. He's regressing. So something needs to be done to get him back on track, get the offense back on track, and let everybody know that, hey, what we're seeing is not acceptable. Because you can apologize for things and say, oh, things need to change, things need to get better, all you want, but if you're not going to fix them, then you're not really taking accountability for them. You're just paying them lip service. And that's what we're seeing so far with Lombardi is he's paying lip service. He's telling us what we want to hear. He's saying that he's being too conservative and he needs to change, but he's not going to change. If he was going to change, he would have changed already. So that's where I would start. And I think another thing you might think about doing too, I think you might think about either giving play calling responsibilities to Ronaldo Hill on defense or firing Hill and giving somebody else play calling responsibilities on defense, taking those defensive play calling responsibilities away from Staley, letting him focus more on managing games instead of calling the defensive plays. It just seems like there's a lot going on for him, and I think they need to do something to simplify things for Staley in terms of in-game management.
So I just want to update a couple things. I mean, and don't forget that they promoted Shane Day to passing game coordinator this year, so they gave him a lot more responsibilities. So it's not like this transition would be totally out of left field if you hired like the running backs coach or something, So there is a easy transition there. But Keenan Allen says he was on a pitch count and that he felt good playing, and they took him out. That's from Keenan Allen. Second is that Keenan Allen says that he thinks the injury to Mike Williams is a high ankle sprain when interviewed after the game today, but there hasn't been tests for that yet. So that sounds like good news. But
there was something in here. Somebody just posted
about Mike?
something saying, Popper saying Mike thinks Popper says it's likely Mike has a torn ACL.
Whoa! That Keenan, not Dr. Keenan Allen, obviously. Mike Williams can barely put any weight on his right leg as he walked through the locker room with help from a training staff member. I'm trying to find where Popper said that. I don't see anything here.
It's in our chat.
It's definitely not on Daniel Popper's Twitter account because he didn't say anything like that. But if somebody says that, then maybe. But anyway, it's speculation. They haven't done tests yet anyway. So,
guys, question for you.
Okay.
What direction do you think this is going in with Keenan, by the way? Because it seems as if he's stepping out, making certain proclamations and giving information that he probably is delving too far into. Things like this. Reporting on what he believes an injury to be. And if he was right, that's probably not something that you should be saying in a presser. That's something you want to leave up to your coaches. And it feels like Keenan's kind of teetering on the edge here of doing a little bit too much. And we know we've had these conversations about what the end of the year is going to look like for him going into the next season, whether there might be a potential move there, if they're going to ask him to take a pay cut or something along those lines, if they're just going to be ready to be done with him altogether. But it just Keenan feels like he's being a little bit more prickly than he normally is.
I agree with that. I think he's definitely being a lot more vocal. But they had their own conversation, apparently. Staley and Keenan did. And what Craig is referring to is that we all think that Keenan's probably not long for the Chargers. He could easily get cut. He's kind of getting long in the tooth. They're kind of moving away from him a little bit, but I just feel like he's as frustrated as we all are, being a fan right now, having to watch from the sidelines and not being able to be on the field. I don't read too much into it. I didn't when he had that whole thing about what are we doing, going for it on fourth down in Cleveland. I'm not having an issue with that. I think basically and I don't have details because we were in here. We didn't see the press conference, but from what it sounded like, Lindsay, and I can't remember her last name, Theory or whatever her name is. Yeah. She's the one who reported that Keenan said that. So I'm sure that Keenan was on mic and they were like, hey, what do you think about Mike's injury? And he goes, oh, I think it was a high ankle sprain. He probably shouldn't have said anything. But then he said there hasn't been test done yet. So I think you're just answering a question. I don't think he's revolting quite yet, but I think he's starting to lose his patience for sure. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I don't think Keenan doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to take a pay cut, first of all. So I think he can read the tea leaves and see what direction things are pointing in, and the fact that he's hurt and he's missed, he's been week to week for a month and a half, and it seems like they're stretching it out and they're taking their time, which I get. It's a soft tissue injury and you want to take your time with your best offensive player or second best offensive player, depending on who you talk to. But I think he's frustrated. I'm sure he wants to be on the field. I kind of, when he tweeted out that whole, like, what are we doing going for it on fourth down? I mean, he's a spectator at that point. Yeah, he's on the team, but I think his emotions just got the better of him and he kind of reacted as a spectator or a fan. Not the best look, but he's on the sideline and he has no ability to contribute to what's happening in the game. So I'm sure he's frustrated and his emotions got the best of him. Not sure what's going on with him talking about Mike's injury. That's definitely not something he should be talking about, even if asked directly about it. He should be referring that back to the trainers or to Coach Staley. So it seems like his mouth is running a little bit and getting him in trouble. I think he's frustrated. I'm sure he wants to be on the field. I think he can see an argument maybe building towards them not bringing him back at the current price based on the fact that he has not been on the field and the offense is struggling without him. So there's a lot of things going on here. I wouldn't read too much into it. I don't know that he's trying to force his way out or he's trying to be, a thorn in the side of the coaches or whatever, but I just think there's some frustration there. And I think it's showing itself in less than ideal ways.
What do you think, Craig?
Honestly, I think just in general, personally, just from what I've gauged from Keenan watching him throughout his whole career, I just think he's a vocal guy. And for the most part, he's done his best to try not to overstep. And right now, just like you guys are saying, the frustration is starting to bubble to the top a little bit, and he's speaking a little more than what he should. Again, it could also have something to do with the fact that Staley allows the guys to be who they are, and he may feel like he can take that freedom and stretch it a little bit. I don't know. I would assume that the conversation that he and Staley had, Staley in his own Staley way would try to rein him in just a little bit. So, yeah, I agree. I just don't think that talking about injuries is something, another player's injuries is something that any other player should do. I'm going to leave that up to the coaching staff. Again, we are looking at that wide receiver room and how much they're paying them right now, and they have to make some, changes and adjustments going into next season. And the Chargers could very well be slow playing him back on the field to make a case to not have to pay him what they owe him next year. So it all makes sense. Besides just the game on the field, still a business. So I think there's a lot of internal stuff going on there that he's attempting to navigate, and it's starting to show a little bit in the pressers that he's having.
I would say with the weeks that he's been out, it's probably erring on his side on how vital he is to this offense, because they just can't get shit going without him on the field. But right now it's no Keenan, no Mike, no Joshua Palmer, no Jalen Guyton. I mean, it's again Michael Bandy, DeAndre Carter, Jason Moore. I don't know what you do if those guys can't play. Keenan says he feels good, so hopefully he's back.
Well, the flip side is that he's 31 and he's been dealing with a soft tissue injury for 6 or 7 weeks now. Yeah. So, from an age standpoint and an injury standpoint for a wide receiver that's already not very fast or explosive to be dealing with those kinds of injuries late in his career, that kind of slants towards the team in terms of, hey, we want you here, but just not at this price. We got to figure something out. Because I think he's due like 25 million, 26 million, something like that next year. So I think there's some gamesmanship going on there. I wouldn't put it past the Chargers to be kind of milking things a little bit to put some pressure on him to take less money next year if it comes to that. So that brings me to another point, and that is, we've talked about coaching issues. We talked about Lombardi. We talked about Staley. We've talked about personnel issues. There's one big overriding issue here that we have not talked about that has been hanging over this team for years and years and years, and it's likely to continue hanging over this team for years and years and years. Do we want to talk about that elephant in the room, or should we skip that?
Are we talking about the family in which starts with an S and ends in Banos? Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're talking about. And I only bring it up because there's a lot of people in the chat talking about hiring Sean Payton. And I am here to tell you the chances of them hiring Sean Payton are slim to none, because that is not how they do business. One, they're not going to fire Staley during the season. They're very unlikely, very, very unlikely, unless things get really, really, really bad, to fire him in the middle of his initial contract. He's going to coach out his 4 years.
He's got to lose like 8 or 9 straight, like I said earlier, for them to even think about firing him.
They'd probably have to lose out the rest of the way for them to even think about firing him. It'd have to get like they were probably going to bring back Lynn until he started comparing the team to Pearl Harbor. And until they became a national joke over doing it. I'm serious.
Yeah.
He would have been back for at least a year if they had not been getting laughed at on national television about game management and he had not compared the team to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. I've got Lombardi comparing this team to 9/11, and I'm going to pull those tweets up so I can send them to the office.
There you go.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, unless things get that bad on a national level, they're not going to fire Staley 2 years into his contract. At least it's very, very unlikely. And even if they do, they're not going to go out and fire a big-name coach, because they're not going to hire somebody who actually knows what they're doing, who is going to be bold enough to tell John Spanos that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Their whole hiring philosophy is about hiring nice people that John Spanos likes, who are not going to tell him that he doesn't know what he's doing, because he's the one making the decisions. So they can fire Telesco, and I'm sure that has a better chance of happening than firing Staley. But nothing's going to change.
That's why they didn't hire Andy Reid. That's why they didn't hire a personality like Rex Ryan, and probably why they didn't hire that other guy that everybody's talking about in the chat, Brian Dable, is because they all got personalities and will push back if they see something that does not fit their coaching scheme. And Staley is not that type of guy. And I think there was somebody who was asking earlier, why is it that every time a coach comes to coach the Chargers, they become Lynn or McCoy? And it's quite honestly, what hasn't changed that stays the same throughout this entire tenure? And it's that family that owns this team. It is absolutely Spanos from Dean to John and everybody else in between.
Yeah,
Yep.
Go ahead, Craig.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's the problem with nepotism. One of the big issues is you look at a guy like Brian Dable, and it hurts my heart to even talk about him. But that guy played under Nick Saban. He knows what football is supposed to look like. And even though Saban's tenure in NFL wasn't all that great, the guy probably still knows more about football. Has forgotten more about football than John Spanos will ever know. So with that being said, having him come to the building, clashing with someone like John, that wasn't ever going to happen. So as close as it seemed to be to happening, apparently, they wanted to go with someone new, fresh and young and impressionable who couldn't provide a bunch of pushback. I mean, Brandon Staley has been a DC in the NFL for 1 year before getting a head coaching job. So with that being said, I mean, who are you to come into the building and, kind of start flexing your muscle? So
Lynn was a running backs coach, only coached half 4 or 5 games with the Bills before coming. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, those personalities are not going to mix well. And John Spanos, given that position, he will not do that without, going out, kicking and screaming. And I don't know if Daddy Warbucks is going to be the one to tell him, you got to roll, son. We need someone in here that can actually do the job. So I think there's a lack of transparency and honesty going on there. And it's like pretty much like a mom and pop situation. And until they get someone in the building that has actual football know-how, at least someone to fill John's role, then I think this is just what we have. We just have to be hopeful to get coaching staff under Staley that, like Jamie, spoke to, can come in and kind of take some of the heat off of him from a defensive play calling standpoint, because I still don't understand why he trusts Lombardi to call offense and won't get in the middle of that, but won't relinquish play calling to the DC in title, who actually doesn't actually call plays. So I'm just very confusing.
Yeah. And I would hate for Ronaldo Hill to be the fall guy here and be like, look, we did a coaching change, and yet he's not the guy making any calls, but then they're trying to give us some kind of show as fans that they're making a coaching shakeup when everything's still going to stay the same. That would really be a shame, but I would not put it past them.
He's the easy target.
Not easy. Yeah.
He is, but I think Staley and Ronaldo Hill go further back than Staley and Lombardi do, because they used to coach together in Denver, and I think they coached together in Chicago too. I'm not sure, but
the Lombardi relationship went back to college for Staley, right?
Did it? I just remember Hill talking about how he and Staley used to spend weekends in the film room together, breaking down film and coming up with game plans for the defense, and how they were so collaborative and how they loved working together. So I don't recall exactly what the ties were with Lombardi, but it just seems like the ties run deeper with Hill, but I could be wrong.
We do also know that Lombardi was not the first choice for OC, so there's that.
Mm-hmm. Sure wasn't. Kevin O'Connell was. And then, so Nick brings up a good point. If you switch out a guy for like Fangio for DC, take out Hill, this is a better team, no? If Staley just takes over head coaching duties and in-game management and all that?
If they actually let him manage games the way he wants to manage them. Because I don't think they're doing that right now. I think the way that the fourth down philosophy has changed and has been so inconsistent this year, I think suggests that he's getting some pressure to not be so, gunslinger with the fourth down calls and to be a little bit more selective with them. And I think that's why he's been so up and down with them, is because they're kind of pulling the reins back because they took so much heat. It would not surprise me if all the heat that the team took during the offseason about how he cost them games and how they're too cavalier with fourth down decisions and all that kind of stuff, if that didn't lead them to pull the reins back a little bit, because they were embarrassed, even though he was doing the right thing, because that's just how they operate.
Do you and send your questions, and we'll probably just answer a bunch before we get out of here, but do you think, now we've said what we would do, and we're giving solutions on what we would do if we were GM, which I think is way ahead of what everybody else is doing on Twitter right now, other than just bitching. Jamie, do you think the Chargers make any changes from players to coaching, anything at all, till after the bye?
I think their ability to make changes to personnel is rather limited right now, from a monetary standpoint and from just a roster flexibility standpoint. I think they'd be more likely to make a change to the coaching staff. I'm going to say they did fire Wiz in the middle of the season, even though Lynn did not want to do that. So I think they will fire Lombardi.
Ooh.
And promote Shane Day.
Okay. Craig?
I'm going to say that I second that, only because you look at the adjustments that have been made to the offensive side of the ball, and it seems like they're hiring people to move up the ranks. So Tom Arth's there, who's also got this Staley connection, could easily just sort of move him into Day's position and then elevate Day into the OC position, and voila. So I think, if anything, it'll probably be Lombardi first.
Okay. So you think they're going to end up getting rid of Lombardi before week 9 or whatever. Are we in week 7?
So 7.
So,
This was week 7. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Lombardi's gone by 9.
Okay. I love it. That's what I want.
If they're going to do it, they should do it now. I mean,
yeah, they got 2 weeks.
Like tomorrow.
In the bye, yeah.
Yeah,
Do
if it was
right
gonna,
away.
if it was ever gonna happen, it would happen right now when they've got 2 weeks to game plan for it. I don't think they do a single thing, and I think they stay pat and just hope that Mike Williams' injury isn't too bad, and they will hope that Keenan Allen can return in week 9, and I think that they're just gonna not make a single move and go, hey, listen, we're only a game back in the AFC West, no time to panic. We got a lot of guys coming back from injury. That's just kind of what I think they're going to end up doing. That's the shit they're going to try to sell us.
Loser mentality.
Let me throw something out at you.
Okay.
And this probably won't happen, but just hypothetically.
I love it. Yeah.
What if you could get Tom House to come in and be the quarterback coach?
Love Tom House.
Because he's the one who fixed Herbert's mechanics in the offseason leading up to the draft.
Yeah.
Everybody gave Pep Hamilton all the credit for doing that. House and John Beck were the guys that made that change. What if you could get House on retainer or on salary and bring him in to just partner him up with Herbert and have him go everywhere Herbert goes and fix Herbert, restore some confidence and fix the mechanics? Because I think that's a lot of the problem too right now. Is just the mechanical issues and the loss of confidence.
Would I bring in Tom House? Go ahead, Craig. I'll let you go first, Craig.
I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I just wonder about the rest of the picture. When we're talking about Herbert, it helps him tremendously. But there are other issues that, that would be a great start. So I would definitely be fine with him coming in. Just, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, how much does that help overall with the personnel issues that surround Herbert? Because there's still going to be issues at wide receiver if they don't make any moves there. And Herbert getting the ball off, getting better at his reads, improving his delivery, still going to be Herbert throwing into tight zones with wide receivers 2 and 3 yards apart from each other, creating zero separation. So Herbert improves in the technical aspect of things, but the result on the field isn't like exponentially better.
Yeah, I'm for it. I just don't. I think what Craig's talking about and having that easy transition from Tom to Shane, moving Shane up to OC and then Tom to quarterbacks coach, seems to be the most logical kind of pathway if they were to fire Lombardi. But I wouldn't mind bringing Tom House in. I thought we've talked about it, Jamie. He was a huge part of how good Herbert has been in the NFL so far, and like Jamie said, Pep got a lot of accolades for that. But I think Tom House was, if not a bigger, definitely had a huge role in the way Herbert played. And I don't want to answer a question with another question, but what do you think about? They just had it, and now I lost it. Hold on 1 second. It was Pop had said. My question first was Shane Day. Do we have any issues promoting Shane Day to offensive coordinator if Shane Day is part of the issue on why his Herbert's mechanics aren't working right now? Do we have an issue with that, Jamie?
Do we know for sure that Day is the one who's responsible for Herbert's mechanics regressing? I know he's the quarterback's coach, but there's a lot of other things going on around Herbert. The line has been bad. The personnel, the skill personnel has been bad. Protection's an issue. He's hurt. There's lots of other things going on that are making him uncomfortable. And I think some of those mechanical issues might be coming from that lack of comfort just in what's going on around him. I don't know that, but that's what it's looked like to me because it's been going on all season. So
yeah, that's
just my opinion.
Craig, you blame Shane for the mechanics?
Not necessarily, just because I would imagine that a lot of what's surrounding Herbert right now, the various things that are happening, whether it's the injury himself personally, the way the team is performing around him, the unfortunate side of things is that, human nature is that we kind of, when our backs are against the wall, we kind of revert back to what we know. So his issues were fixed. but it's not what he's accustomed to as far as playing quarterback is concerned. His mechanics have been what they were before they were fixed, and he hasn't had enough, I guess, time on task as opposed to what he was prior to that to have those be what he falls back to. So right now, you got all the issues around him. He's dealing with something from a physical standpoint himself. I think he's just gone back to what he was, and it's not necessarily that Shane Day has done anything to create that. He just may not be the guy to remedy the issue or fix it. If Tom House was the person who came in and made that work, and it was John Beck, right? If those were the two guys that together were the ones that made that work for Herbert, they might need to go back under the hood. He might need to spend some time with someone like that he worked with prior. Maybe Shane Day isn't the mad scientist to go in and tinker and help fix it for him because he wasn't the one who fixed it in the first place.
So Tracy dropped a little thing for us. Pop said that Wiz was fired for other issues, not just coaching, and that he, Pop, can speak to that at a later date. Do we think that Wiz was hired for something or fired for more than just the ineptness of the offense under his helm?
Jamie, did you hear anything? Because if not, then I did see something that Pop put up a while ago.
Oh, you did?
No, I heard it during one of his lives. So I don't remember if it was the most recent or one prior. But he did on one of his lives say that there was more to Wiz being let go than just the coaching issues. There was some personal stuff there. And, I mean, not my business to spill, but, I mean, Pop did say that he would speak to it at some point. I've seen some things, but I don't want to speak to that man's personal life in that regard because I can't verify that. If Pop has information, he would. I mean, by being an insider and being a beat writer for the team, then I'll just let him say that. But I don't personally know, so I don't feel comfortable speaking to it.
I hadn't heard anything specific. I don't know anything about Wiz's personal life or anything going on off the field or anything like that. I always kind of got the impression that they kind of gave him a choice, gave Lynn a choice of you can fire Wiz or you can fire George Stewart. Make your pick. And I always felt like he picked Wiz because Stewart was the guy that got him into coaching. Because both were struggling on the coaching side with the X's and O's and with developing players. And I think they boxed Lynn into a situation where he had to pick one. That was always my read on the situation, but I don't. That's just how I read it personally.
I've never heard anything about about Wiz, so I don't know anything about that. I just had always thought because the offense was so bad, but yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe he'll talk about it at some point. I don't know if he's just trying to bait us in a little bit or what, but
I know at the time.
Was he here for Wiz?
Pop?
Was Pop working for the Chargers when Wiz was still? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was because that was Lynn's last year, right? Or second to last year?
Okay.
Was it his last year or second to last year?
I think Pop came in.
Because Steichen was only offensive coordinator for half a season, right?
Yeah.
Second to last year. I think when Pop came in.
Yeah, my timeline's getting fuzzy.
Yeah, it would have been the second to last year because Hamilton. It was Pep and Steichen the last year. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think there might have also been some. Steichen had been with the team for a long time, and he was like kind of like that homegrown coaching prospect. Part of me always wondered if there was an interest in elevating him, and maybe that was part of the reason why Wiz was let go too. But again, that's just me kind of reading the tea leaves, so to speak. I don't have any inside information on that.
Yeah.
Quick question, really quickly. So defensively, this has been on my mind for a minute. It's something that I noticed. I know it's changing gears a little bit. Who makes the in-game defensive personnel decisions?
Who makes the personnel decision?
In-game personnel decisions, as far as who's getting reps, how many, who's a part of the rotation.
They've always presented themselves as being very collaborative in terms of game plan and personnel decisions on both sides of the ball. So I would assume that there's probably some give and take there between Staley and Hill and the defensive coaches, the positional coaches, I would think.
Yeah.
But Staley probably has final say. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I would assume too.
The reason why I'm asking is because I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Seattle was up 11, and Gary Tillery is out on the field on first down defensively. He was starting drives off, so we know that Seattle's probably not going to be tossing the ball up and down the field at that point. They're probably going to start trying to salt the game away with the run game because the Chargers hadn't really shown ability to stop it or shut it down. But Tillery was out there pretty early and often, and I don't think it had anything to do with injury. So I was just curious as to whose call that was.
I assume it's a combination of Hill and Staley, with Staley kind of making that final call whether they go with it or not. And that's kind of how they define their roles in the offseason. I don't know if that's changed, but that's what I assume. All right, let's go through some of these questions. You got to give an answer. What's more of a liability right now, offense or defense?
The offense. I think the offense is putting the defense in some really bad positions, and that's why the defense looks like they're folding late in games because they're exhausted. They were on the field for like 35 minutes today. I'll be right back. I'm just going to turn a light on.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, Craig?
Said the same thing earlier. It's more the offense because you're giving you're putting the defense in situations where they're in short fields. And again, the Seahawks scored 30-plus points, and none of them were defensively. So there's that. And they're like a middle-of-the-road offense. So that tells you all you need to know.
Okay, I know Nick's being a huge smartass here. He says, what wide receivers would make this team to successfully execute this Lombardi scheme? I don't think Randy Moss or Jerry Rice would make it work. If you had to pick a wide receiver to put on this Chargers team right now, so who are you taking in their prime? Jerry Rice or Randy Moss? Craig?
Oh, Moss, without a doubt. I mean,
okay.
Jerry Rice is the GOAT, but what's this team lack?
Yeah, speed. Yep. Mm-hmm. Jamie?
In this offense?
That right today, in their prime, you putting prime, Moss or Rice?
In the scheme they're running, Rice.
Yes.
Because they wouldn't throw the ball deep to Moss.
Oh, see, I think they would if they got Randy Moss. I think they would. I'm with Craig.
Brighton, right?
Yeah, but an actual deep threat who can catch the ball.
In theory, yes.
Did you guys like Shane? Sorry, did you have an argument, Jamie? I didn't want to cut you off here.
No, all I was going to say is they're throwing the ball short and they're looking for guys to create after the catch, and I think in that short intermediate passing game, Rice would chew up yards. Even more effectively than Keenan does. So that's why I went with Rice.
Oh, they need that extra element in Moss. I'm with Craig. Okay, so first off, Nathan says, Pop came in 2019 to answer our question. And then moving on, did you guys like Shane Steichen? Obviously succeeding right now in Philadelphia. But Craig, did you like Steichen when he was with the Chargers?
If I remember correctly, I didn't hate him, but I wasn't in love with him either. The play calling was a little wonky. But again, a lot of that was situational stuff. They would end up behind the sticks, down in distance, and of course, freaky things would happen when you have a porous offensive line. So I didn't necessarily blame him for that. A lot of that had to do with personnel, and I didn't hate him. I just don't think he really got all that great of a fair shake with the personnel he had. Because I mean, look at him now in Philly.
Man, yeah, I don't think they ever gave him a chance to really be Shane Steichen. I think he was stifled, really. So I didn't really care for him. Jamie, did you?
I remember doing some film studies on him and thinking that he had some pretty creative play calls where he was running multiple different plays out of the same formation, and he was layering play calling and building on things. If something worked, he'd go back to it, and then he'd add a wrinkle to it later, and you'd see the same thing 3 or 4 times with different wrinkles. So there were elements of what he did that I liked. It wasn't consistent, and it's weird. It seems like every Charger team always has this, like, hey, we're having a great drive, we're across the 50, let's do a double reverse flea flicker to catch them off guard, and they always wind up blowing it. It's too slow developing, and they lose 15 yards, and the drive is over. They had those with Steichen all the time, just like they do with Lombardi for no apparent reason. But outside of those occasional brain farts, I thought that there were some good things that Steichen did. He showed some promise. I just wanted somebody more experienced in here.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like with Frank Reich and Shane Steichen, I just don't think they really gave those guys a chance. So here we go. Huge ass, a guy I'll always read his name. Rank these 3 coaches: Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn, Mike McCoy. I will let Jamie, you go ahead and start.
I think Staley is a better coach than all of them, than Lynn and McCoy.
We all agree there, I think.
Yeah, I think the reason that I say that, I know Lynn had a playoff win as a Charger coach. He had what did they go 12-4 during the 2018 season, I think it was. However, they needed literally everything to go right to have that playoff run with Lynn. Nobody got hurt that year. Every break they had, that every play that could have gone either way went their way that year. Literally everything fell in their lap. Anytime things didn't fall in their lap, they fell apart. Same thing went with McCoy. He needed everything to be perfect. Injuries, penalties, boneheaded errors, all those things. Anytime those things happened, they couldn't overcome them. And neither Lynn nor McCoy were able to develop players. You didn't see any kind of player development under those 2 guys. At least with Staley, yes, there are some game management issues. I'm not sure all those game management issues are on him. I do think the lack of preparedness is an issue, but we are seeing players develop. You're seeing examples. There are flashes of Tillery developing. There are fewer flashes of Murray developing. Naz flashed a few times today. He had a good year last year. Seems like he's starting to rebound. Michael Davis seems like he's progressing under Staley. Joshua Kelly is another one who seemed like he was progressing before he got hurt. So you're seeing guys develop under Staley and his coaches, which is something that we just never saw under Lynn and McCoy, which is why I would say if I was going to rank them, I would rank Staley 1, and then there's really no difference between Lynn and McCoy. I guess I'll go Lynn and McCoy, but I think you can interchange those 2.
Craig, you got a different take than that?
My order is all the same, but I do have a difference between Lynn and McCoy. So Staley, understands football at least. He can talk it. It makes sense when he speaks about it. Lynn was at least someone that the team had belief in. He was somewhat of a motivator. He was a leader of men, at least. I don't know what the hell Mike McCoy was. Forrest Gump incarnate. There was nothing McCoy did that really made sense to me at all from an offensive standpoint. I don't feel like he understood his personnel, and I don't think he ever had the belief of the team. I never saw anything about Mike McCoy that made me feel like any of those guys would run through a brick wall for him. So Staley's, from a football standpoint and understanding the game, Lynn for the leadership to an extent, but McCoy is just a warm body. Yeah,
so I'm actually with Craig here. It's as listed: Staley, Lynn, McCoy. McCoy was just soft. Lynn, at least we've got that flex from the sideline. At least was a motivator at some point, and that's the only thing that differentiates the 2 between Lynn and McCoy. Staley, I think, is a much better head coach than the 2 of them. So, last thing here: who are the Chargers going to draft in the first round of next year's draft? I know we haven't really looked into prospects yet. We both are draft heads, so. What position do we think, starting right now, if they had to pick somebody? And why is it Jordan Addison out of USC? No. Let's go position. What position would you guys go?
Based on the way things are going this year, I would say I would be shocked if it's not a wide receiver.
Craig?
I'm going wide receiver, and Jamie and I probably have our eyes on the exact same guy.
Let's see. Is it God, I gotta pull. Is it a dude from LSU?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
Is it the TCU wide receiver? Mm-mm. Quentin Johnson? No. You guys have already talked about this?
Yep.
We've had some background on this.
Wow. Man, hold on. I gotta is it Jackson? At Ohio State? Smith?
Nope.
No. Okay.
I started watching Film in May, by the way.
Kason? No, it's not Kason because you said no. Man, I'm trying to get into my. Dang Dang. And this is a first round wide receiver?
I think he'll be a first round wide receiver. Yeah.
Josh Downs, North Carolina.
He's on my list, but no.
This is gonna be rough, Jamie. I'm sorry, Garrett.
Rashee Rice,
Nope.
the SMU guy. Man, I'm just trying to go off names that I've heard. Raheem Jarrett, Maryland.
No, it's the Cowing kid from Arizona.
Jacob Cowing.
Jacob Cowing.
And you think he's going to be a first-round wide receiver?
Yes, I do.
Think he might, depending on how the season ends up for the Chargers, he might fall right in their laps again. Depending, like if they're middling, we're talking like somewhere mid-first round towards the 20s. I think he'll end up falling right to them again.
I'm being honest. I haven't heard his name in the first round at all mocked at this point. But we're way early, obviously. But, okay. All right. So wide receiver?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Let's see. Anything else? Nathan says it's going to be a right tackle, wide receiver, or edge.
I don't think it'll be a right tackle. They'll either retain Pipkins or slide Salyer over.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, I think you're right. Okay.
The way things are going the last few games, it's probably going to be Salyer, not Pipkins.
I don't see them taking an edge in the first round either with what they invested in Mac and having Bosa. So, yeah, I think wide receiver is probably it. All right, guys. Well, Craig, can't thank you enough for joining us. You're going to pick up the slack, but Jamie toughed it out. Thank you, Jamie, for coming on and making it work. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, Craig is giving us videos every week. It's I Got 5 on it. Check it out on the Lightning Round Podcast YouTube channel. He is at top_flight3. He's got a lot of measured great takes, so go follow him over there. We've really become friendly with him. He's a good dude, so go ahead and follow him. Watch his videos. Jamie, thanks for joining us. I am Garrett, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.